Hi, I'm DrConnection, and today we're going to talk about email, hoping that we will not use so many emails anymore at one point. With us today we have a really legendary guest, an ex-IBMer that currently is an independent advisor for social business transformation, and that more than 7 years ago he was too tired of getting too many emails every day, and he just decided to drop that and to redirect all his communication to social business tools. Do you think you can do that as well? Do you think it's going to be useful for you? Time to start. Hi, and I have the honor to have here with me Luis Suarez. Hi Luis, how are you?
Hello, DrConnections. How are you? I'm doing very well, thank you.
Very good. Luis is on Skype because he's currently in Gran Canaria, right? So we are doing this episode on the net, so using actually social business tools. And today Luis is here, and I'm glad that you're here with us. Probably, I know you don't really need a doctor, of course, but for the benefit of all my patients and everybody that is watching, your message is really clear. You don't use email for communicating at all, right? And you weren't doing that even when you were in IBM before. So that's my first question to you today: is what is the benefit you perceive of this kind of communication?
That's right. It's now been 7 years since the last time that I used email at work, and that was when I was back at IBM. And now that I'm an independent advisor, I'm actually relying a lot more on digital tools. And there are lots of benefits, and talking to DrConnections, I can tell you that the number one benefit is that there's a lot less stress in my life, right? There's no longer that constant urge of having to clear my inbox, of having to be on top of it, of having to, respond back and forth and finding all sorts of various different productivity issues in terms of how awful it is as a collaboration tool. So in terms of benefits, number one is a lot less stress, a lot more openness, in terms of how you actually work more open with other people. So that means that knowledge flows versus being closed and opaque and obscure in some hidden mailbox or whatever else. There's a lot more transparency as well, which is always good because that allows people to make better decisions with the information that is available out there. And one of the other benefits, and like I said, there are lots of different types of very different benefits, but one of my other favorites as well is the ability to demonstrate my thought leadership on my skills and my expertise by no longer protecting and hoarding my knowledge, by actually proactively sharing it across all of the various different social tools, right?
No.
Like I said, there are lots of different benefits, but those are some of the main ones that I have enjoyed so far.
Okay, so there are many benefits, and those are really important. And it's interesting as well to understand when was this aha moment you got? So when you started realizing that you should go to this way, and how exactly did you start in the back when you were in IBM?
Right.
That you could communicate only with connection, and I don't know if you can make also some examples to me.
Yeah, so that was 7 years ago, so that was February 2008, and the aha moment was coming back from a conference event at IBM, at Lotusphere, in Orlando, where I had hundreds of emails over the course of one single week. And I just basically thought myself that it was not a way for me to be productive to spend the following 1 or 2 days just trying to keep up with what was going on while I was away. And so that was the aha moment of saying I needed to do something about it. There was also the situation where I no longer thought that email was a very productive tool in terms of how we communicate, in terms of how we collaborate. Not necessarily because it's a bad tool per se, but because in the complex environment that we work, it was no longer good enough. Working in multiple projects, multiple teams across different geographies, it was a challenge, right? I needed to have something that was a lot more open, a lot more pervasive, and in a way, a lot more closer to the work that I was doing with multiple teams in terms of what I mentioned, some of the benefits around clarity, transparency, openness, collaboration in itself, right? That's why Connections was so good and why it still is so good to help me bring in that transparency forward and that openness, right? And the other aha moment related to it, apart from those other two, was that when I used to work with younger generations, college students who were doing their PhD thesis and they wanted to consult with me, or they wanted to interview me, or they wanted me to mentor them, Over the years, I never exchanged a single email with them. Never, ever. It was all Facebook, LinkedIn, Skype, Twitter, whatever else. So I thought, if this is the new generation of workers coming into the workforce, we better adapt to how they work, right? So those were some of the various different aha moments. There wasn't really a single one. There were like three major ones, right? Like no longer productivity tool, the ability to work with younger employees because they no longer use email and they use one of these digital tools, and the ability for me to regain that productivity, right? To encourage people to become a bit more open in terms of how they collaborated, in terms of how they share their knowledge across, so that other people would benefit by making better decisions.
And regarding IBM, because my patients are all IBMers, how they could cope with Connections. So you were an IBM before, so how could you manage that?
It's a lot simpler than what most people think. Because when I tell people, would you be able to stop using email today? Most people will actually tell me, no, I won't be able to. 7 years ago, I went radical and I stopped using email altogether in all circumstances, right? Then there were a couple of different use cases that I had to still continue using email for, like confidential content or, for instance, calendaring and scheduling. But the thing is that if you want to start that journey of stop using email, it's better if you start doing it gradually. It's better if you start actually picking up a number of various different interactions and move them away from your email. So one example that everyone, all of the fellow colleagues at IBM will be able to relate to it, and that's questions. We should not be able to go and answer questions via email. We should go into Connections and ask people questions openly so that not only that person will benefit from the answer, but everyone else in the networks will benefit from the answer. So every time that you have got a question that comes through in notes, respond back in Connections. Or don't use notes. Go right away into Connections and ask the question there into people's profiles. The main advantage of doing that, the main benefit, is that you generate transparency in terms of who knows what kind of expertise and skills are there, and how people can benefit from them, right? That's one example. Another major example is sharing files. Don't share files via notes. Use Connections files. Move all of the files into Connections, and the main advantage that you're going to have from that is that you will reduce redundancy, duplication of documents, and the ability to have your own document library that is available to everyone else. So people will not bother you as often as they're doing it now. They will go and self-serve themselves by going into your files section and finding all of the content that they need in there, right? So when you collaborate, you become a lot more effective, because what you will do is you will be reducing a lot of friction. All of the back and forth, all of those extra attachments, they're gone. There's one single place, one single conversation, one single file that you work on, right? So those two examples are really good starters. Now, if you want to reduce the amount of email, would you start with those two, one week one, the other week the other, and then you continue doing that over the course of a number of weeks in terms of picking up all the various different examples. Like, for instance, I can say newsletters, I can see project status reports, I can see sharing knowledge openly with other people or whatever else. So if you find different use cases and you do one every week, in a matter of just a few weeks, you will probably reduce by about 80% the amount of email traffic that you have today.
And that's huge. That's a huge amount.
That's a start. That's a very start. That's
also
where it goes.
Considering that majority of who is seeing Dr. Connection are IBMers from finance, and finance is really concerned about confidentiality. We have a lot of audits and information are confidential, so we need to share. And the second example that you mentioned with sharing files, and there is also a Dr. Connection episode about files that you can find in the site. You can share the files totally in a confidential way, so just with the people you decide.
And you can do it. You can do it through a private community, which will be confidential community, or you could do it through a private activity, or even a private file. That's one of the beautiful things about Connections, that it gives you a level of granular interactions where you decide how public the file should be and with whom it will be shared, whether it's going to be publicly to everyone, or just to a group of people or a community, or just to one or two individuals, right? That's one of the great things about Connections, that it gives us a lot of flexibility in order to help people understand how, depending on the context, depending on the nature of the confidentiality of the file, I will be able to share with more or less people. But I will still be having that capability of sharing it accordingly with those who need it.
Yeah. And another question in this case is, if we have all this benefit that you mentioned, and it's actually easy, and you reduce a lot of email communication that we see currently as a general trouble in time consuming and time spending and so on, why do you think that so many people are still using so much the emails nowadays?
Because it's easy. It's easy sending an email, right? And this is what I keep telling people about, that yes, I understand that sometimes social networking tools are not easy because of the level of interaction, some of the complexity that they have, some of the different mindsets that we need to adapt to and everything else. And the reason why people still use email is because they're easiest way. Now, the thing though, and some of the patients from DrConnections may not like this, what I'm about to say, but sometimes easy is not best, right? So yes, it's easy to send an email for you. Yes, it's easy for you to send an email with an attachment, but think about the receiver. Think about the impact that you're going to have on their inboxes. That if you send an email with an attachment of 20, 30 MB, if they have got the mail quota, if they're coming close to that mail quota and they exceed it, right away you blow off their productivity. Email is a very selfish tool. It only cares about you as the individual sender. What we need to do is we need to start thinking a bit more about everyone else, about how can I help others become more effective with my knowledge without disrupting, without friction, right? Unfortunately, everyone thinks that email is so easy to use, and that's why everyone resorts to it. But think that, again, easy is not always best. Think about how can you make lives of other colleagues easier, more effective by using more open tools versus just caring about yourself, right? Care about others, and the good thing about it is that if you care about others, they will care back for you. That's how it works.
Yeah. And also in general, what I'm usually saying is, like, you don't have to remove 100% your email communication. It's like there are some extreme cases that they're working, but for the majority of us, we just need the majority of 80% of your communication can be much more powerful if you use social business tools. There is still something that might need emails, and this something might also at one point, with the change of the processes and change of some needs, will also change in the but for the moment there are a big bunch of data that we can share totally without
I'll tell you,
communication.
to give, for the patients of DrConnections out there, right? So 7 years that I have been doing this no email, I still get email from people, right? I'm now averaging around 3.5 to 5 emails per week. So there still is a chance for people to send emails, right? There's still a need for a number of different use cases. So the thing is that we need to figure out what are the use cases for which I want to use email, and what are other use cases for which Connections is better, it's more effective, it's more collaborative, right? So email still has a place. It still has a context of how we work for certain interactions. The key message is that it's not meant for all interactions. There are better tools for that, right? So that's why it's a journey. That's why we start with the small steps. That's why we pick out one use case at a time. And before we realize that over the course of weeks, we're done with it. And we have a level where, for instance, nowadays I spend on email around 2 minutes. 2 minutes. The vast majority of the time then is spent in open collaborative tools with my clients or with other business partners that I may have, etc., right? That's what it is. Versus what some people will tell you, that they spend 3 to 5 hours every day. We need to stop that. That's not an effective way of working.
Yeah. Another point in this is, sometimes it might happen that you are the only one in your team. So we watch this video, we are convinced that it's a good way to go, but then we are the only one in our team. Do you think that persevering in this way is good, and at one point it's going to pay off?
Well, the thing is that if you want to stop using email, you get your team off email as well. That's as simple as it works. Why? Because otherwise they will continue doing email and you will not be using email, and it may be problematic over the course of time. So what I advise people to do is to be brave enough to go to your team and challenge them in a very healthy, constructive, and open discussion about how you could collaborate in a more social manner, in a more collaborative manner, right? And bring in potential business pain points that you guys may have, like lots of emails, lots of files that have been shared via email, lots of questions that only 1 or 2 people will know the answer about, and then obviously we lose all of that knowledge, that precious knowledge. So bring in a number of potential business problems that email is carrying away or carrying on with how I work with colleagues. Now, when you actually present that problematic situation about how you collaborate through email to your team is going to say, what can we do? And that's when you're going to say, well, we have got DrConnections. We have got connections who can help us become more effective. Look at the things that we can do. So the key message there is, if you go to your team and you have a conversation as to how you can collaborate better, and then the most important bit, you offer yourself to help educate them on how to use connections effectively, what you will see there is that people will be more than willing to walk your way of not using email as much as they used to. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of patience and a lot of perseverance, but once you get your team off email, everyone else will understand how you work in a different way and will adjust to that different way of working. That's how I did it. That's how I did it when I was at IBM. I was basically, when I started, I was basically part of what was known as the Blue IQ team, and I basically educated all of my team members to use Connections instead. And we moved the vast majority of interactions away from email into Connections. And we became our own living examples of how we transform the way we work by becoming more open and collaborative and inviting everyone else in the company to participate in that Blue IQ program. Right.
Okay, to wrap up, at the end we covered many topics. Is there any topic that I didn't ask you, or any question I didn't ask you and that I should have?
One thing, get started today. That's what I would say. You know, if I were DrConnections, I would say get started today. And actually next week, you may have a great chance, because next week on the 5th of the 5th of 2015, there's a global movement around the No Email Day. And we're all going to be celebrating it for one day, not send a single email whatsoever. And try it out. Try it out and see how it will work. Try out how you will be able to cope with your workload without using email. So resist the urge to send an email. If someone asks for your help, use Connections, use Same Time, use whatever other tools. So next week, on the 5th of the 5th of 2015, remember, No Email Day. That's your chance to thrive and live in a different world using collaborative tools like Connections. Join us.
And okay, great. Thank you, Luis, for that, and thank you for watching. And please remember that May 5th there is effectively no email day, so you can try to be like Luis and challenge your communication routine actually in this way. I hope this video was useful and an inspiration for everybody. Feel free to post any question below, and if you have any question for DrConnection, just hashtag DrConnection and I will be happy to help you all. Thank you, Luis, for being here with us.
Thank you, DrConnection. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone.
And at the next episode. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.